Well, hey everyone, I want to provide a bit of a recap on the message on Psalm 73, which is a prayer for guidance. And this is a psalm written by Asaph, and he was one of ancient King David's leaders in one of the three choirs. And this is known as a wisdom psalm. It's known as a psalm that we come to when we're looking for wisdom in times of doubt and times of uncertainty. And essentially, Asaph is writing the psalm and he's going through a crisis. And the crisis that he's going through is that he is trying to center his life on God, and he is wanting to live a life that is pure in heart, and things aren't going well for him. And he looks around him at people that are living lives that are not pure in heart and want nothing to do with God. And he sees their lives as going really, really well, and things are, full of abundance. And he would even say it looks like they're experiencing shalom, and it feels so, so unfair. And so he starts off the psalm by saying, surely God is good, and yet this is happening and it's so difficult and makes no sense. And he's really feeling like maybe he's been ripped off by God. And so the psalm is his journey through that. And I love this psalm because it's raw and it's honest, and it gives us permission that we can bring our honest questions and struggles to God without needing to filter anything. And that God not just can handle our honesty, but welcomes our honesty, and that God is a place that we can bring all of that. And I think that's just so beautiful and important. And as he goes on in the psalm, he moves towards his doubts and he wrestles with them as he grows in wisdom. And so there's essentially four different things that he does. One is that he talks about, he writes about the source of his doubt. And really, he's just becoming aware that he's envious of the wicked. He's envious and jealous of those who want nothing to do with God, and yet their lives are going really well. And so he names that, and I guess essentially invites us to consider what are our motivations when we're feeling similar feelings. And then the second thing that he does, and I think this is really cool, is that he begins to realize that his faith doesn't just impact himself, but it's also connected to the well-being of others. And that deeply impacts him and actually drives him to the temple, where he engages in community with others. He immerses himself in a life of faith. And there was something about that was a real turning point for him, and begins to actually reshape his perspective and his heart and his life and his mind. And I think that's an invitation for us, because when things are difficult, our tendency is to want to pull back. And what we see in this psalm is an invitation to lean into community, to lean into the people in our lives, the people in our faith community that can walk alongside with us and that can hold on to faith for us when we're struggling. In verse 18, the third thing that he does is that he starts to realize that, everybody experiences suffering. And the one thing that maybe people that are far from walking with God don't have or don't experience is the presence of God in the midst of suffering. And so he begins to realize that he actually, while he's going through a difficult time, and we don't know what that is, he experiences, or he is aware of God's presence with him. And there's something about that brings him to a place of inner peace and shalom. And then the fourth thing that we find is that he actually moves to this place of what I called in the message rock bottom. He identifies himself as a brute beast before God. And it's when he gets to that place of brokenness and becoming aware of just how he's at the end of himself, that then he actually feels God's presence and realizes that God is with him and that God has always been with him. And when we see these beautiful verses in 24 to 28 that he ends off the psalm with, that are just a really intimate picture of how God met him in that space. And so that's really the journey of the psalm. And the invitation to pour out our hearts to God and to know that God meets us in our suffering, and that it's there that we can really experience God's comfort and a perspective that only God can give us, and that we can know that we are not alone. And so wish you just a really great conversation with your life groups tonight, and grateful for the Psalms and all that they're teaching us. So blessings to each of you.